Okay, so before we dive into WordPress, I just wanted to quickly mention that in the data that I'm going to be using, I've added a slug column for the golf course and also a slug for the state and city. And the reason I've done that is that even though WP All Import would create a slug for us based on the title of the post, I want these because when we start to change this data to do archive pages, and I'm going to do an example where I do a page for each state, having these here means that I can link internally to those pages from the archives quite easily. So I want to have the flexibility to control my own slugs rather than let WP All Import do it for me. And you can use a tool like WTools has a slug generator, so you just type all of the lines here, so you could copy them from your CSV and then generate them and then copy the resulting output. So golf course 1, golf course 2, whatever. So you can literally just copy and paste from Excel and then copy these back in onto a new column. And that's all I've really done. I used Python, but you can use this if you're no code as well. And it will just be a bit more flexible for us when we come to make the archive pages. So WordPress. I've set up a WordPress site on golfnearby.net. This is basically a plain WordPress install. I'm using the GeneratePress plugin theme and a bunch of plugins here, which I'll show you about. So the first thing I want to do is set up the custom fields that we're going to use. And I've already done this because I'm prepared. So it's basically, I've just done a field for every single piece of data we have in the data set. And I've just labeled them. They're all text. You could get fancy down the road by changing these to numbers if you know that the data is numerical, and then you can do calculations on it and other things with code. But just to keep it simple, these are all text, and at the minute they're on post type post, but I'm going to create a new post type called courses to keep it out of here. So to do that, I use custom post type UI, which is a free plugin. So we're going to call this slug's going to be course, plural is courses and course. Populate that. I'm just going to put courses. I don't like the my part of that. And everything else can stay the same. It's basically they're going to create the same as a blog post in terms of being able to have categories, but it's not hierarchical, so you can't have sub pages. So I'm going to come down here. All I want to change is menu position to 5 because I want it near the top, and then menu icon. They have like a flag, like a golf course flag. We can use that just to make it look a bit nicer. We'll let this post type use categories and tags as well, and then add it. Okay, so now we have courses in our menu, which we can start the import process. So let's go new import. And I've already exported my database. So you've got your courses or your CSV, wherever it's come from, and then we're going to start that. Okay, we're going to create new courses from this. So the plugin will show you an example of the first row of data, so you can check that everything's working properly. If you're using a government data source or something that's not using commas, you can change the delimiter here to a pipe or a tab or whatever. But usually, if it's a CSV, we don't need to do that. So this is the main editor where we're going to create the template. And all you really do, the data for the row is on the right-hand side, and you just drag and drop it. So if we set the golf course as the title, then when we preview it, the title will be the golf course. And that's it. So we can start to write this out. for visiting, and we can put the golf course name in again. And I know that in the data, both city and state is always defined, so we can do city state without worrying about whether or not it's going to be a blank field. Because some of these fields, for example, like annual rounds, like in this row, we have information, but in some of them we won't. So I think if you skip to like the 4th or 5th row, we have an N. Now this is the main issue with doing completely no code in WordPress using this plugin or any programmatic SEO tool, is that if your dataset has blanks in it, you either need to prepare it before you import it or use some code on the front end here in WordPress so that we can only show information that we actually have data for. So I'll get rid of that. We know we have a description. And this is the other thing as well, by the way, with WP All Import, drag and drop is not very easy at all. It's actually painful. So we've got a description, which will bring that in. And this is one of our generic ones that we did. And then we need to start writing the template. And as I say, because there's a lot of fields that are missing and it's quite hard to tell, like there's no rhyme or reason to it. There's certain emails are missing, certain faxes, annual rounds or N or remarks. And there's a lot of fields that don't have data in them. So Club Pro doesn't have one, there's no designer on this one. So it's really hard to build a sort of generic template that encompasses all of the data, but also make sure we're not putting in blank fields. And so there's a few ways you could do it. Like I say, you could do it a bit more manually on the data cleaning phase before we import into WordPress. You could go through and make sure that every single row has all of the data. You could remove rows that don't have data and have a smaller test site to see how it goes before you invest any more time or money into it. Or you could do it with a bit of code. And just for time, I'm going to do it with code. And the way I like to do it is with shortcodes. So if I just do address here, this is a shortcode that hasn't been created yet, but what I can do is create that shortcode and get data. And the way that I would do it is by using the advanced custom fields and adding information to it. So first of all, we need to fill out this by dragging and drop. That didn't work. Try again. No, yeah, we did it. So that's city, county. Where's county? This is going to take a while. I'll just skip ahead because otherwise it's going to be very boring for you to watch this. Okay, so I filled in all of the course info with the fields in the database. So now we can start to add more things. So we could do maybe a course table. Because we don't really know ahead of time what information is going to be available, it might be a nice thing to just do a course information in a table. And all I'll do again is I'll just do a short code called course table, which can output that information. I know this is a bit of a cheat. It's not completely no code, but I do think that it will give you some good ideas for how to make better programmatic sites. If everybody was just doing templates with complete data sets, then there's no real competitive advantage to you. So I think just seeing how this would be done is a really good way to hopefully come up with some new ideas that other people aren't doing. So we'll do FAQs as well. So this is a way to add some content to the page for search terms, long tail keywords and that kind of thing. And for the template, I'm going to leave it at that for now. I'll do another example case study later where I have all the data and then we can do proper templates in here that is a bit more robust. So there's options in here for rank math So we could just do golf course in city and state, and this will set the rank math title to that. Description, we can just use description. Okay, I don't think we need anything else on that. And then the other thing we want to do is set close comments and trackbacks, post slug. So we want to use the slug that we created. Okay, because then we have that in our database anyway, so that when we create the state pages, we have the links already to this. And you can do other stuff here, like changing when the dates were published at random dates. You can go anywhere from years back. If it April 1st to August 8th. Okay, and then we'll save this as courses and then continue to step 4 to do the import. And we'll come back to this and edit the template later. So unique ID, if your table has an ID field that you know is unique, you can use that. Otherwise, you could use golf course plus city plus state. You could do different things to make this completely unique. WP All Import uses this when you re-import the data later to update those posts. So it's really important that you have something that's unique. Okay, so we're going to create new courses from the records that are newly present. We'll update existing ones. We'll skip any if their data has not changed. And we're going to update all data. And obviously we can't schedule anything because the file, it needs to be a remote file or download from URL. If you're using a specific type of server, you can change these settings to optimize the speed of it. And I'm just going to click continue. And the import process will start. No, I don't want to save that. Let's go and let's import 16,862 posts. This is going to take a long time on this cheap server. So I'm going to pause the video and then come back when it's done. Okay, so while this is importing, it's taking a long time because this server is nowhere near as good as my Mac. But what we can do is some posts have been created already. So here we've got one for Livingston Country Club. So we've got the introduction, we've got the description that we created before we imported, and we have our shortcodes. So what we can do while we're waiting for the rest of the import is to just try and build out these shortcodes. So what I did is I wrote this simple function for WordPress, which basically just gets the address field from advanced custom fields, the city, the state, all the information that would entail an address. And then if the main address field's not there, then we're just going to return nothing. I'm not going to show an address. And then if we get to this point here, then we'll create some HTML. So we'll have a H2 with contact details for the golf course, and then we'll create the address. All it's really doing is taking each piece of the address, starting with the address, city and state. So first line of the address, city and state, and then if there's a zip, it adds that. If there's a phone number, adds that. Same for email and website, and then it returns the HTML. So and then it adds the shortcode, just called address. So if I copy this, then back in this plugin, snippets, we just click add new, and we'll just call it shortcodes. We can keep all of our shortcodes here. It depends how you want to do it. Some people prefer to have one snippet per function or per shortcode to make it easy to find. Whatever works. So this is going to create the shortcode. So we'll save changes and activate. So when we come back to the Livingston page and refresh the page, the address now becomes a piece of content. And it wasn't very difficult to write this code. I mean, I used AI. If I show you, like, we can literally, it will pretty much do it for you. See, get field, course, zip, city. It does it for you. Like, I'm not actually typing anything. It's just guessing what I need, and it's pretty much accurate. Obviously, country's not there, so sometimes you would just have to delete it, but it's quite easy to use this AI tool to do that. And again, developers can do this very simply, very quickly to write these functions. I mean, this probably would take a developer, this would cost $10 on Upwork at a push. That's like an upper limit. It's so simple to write for somebody who knows a bit of PHP and WordPress. So don't be afraid of using code, because it is a bit of a superpower when it comes to programmatic sites. And I'll show you how I did the FAQs one as well. What was the other one I had? Oh yeah, the course table. This one's interesting. So because all of our data is stored in custom fields, we can use this function from ACF, which gets all of the custom fields that are applicable to the post or course that we're on. So then I can create a table, and then I can loop each of these fields. I'll exclude these ones because we're already using the address in the other shortcode, and I'll exclude the description because we've already put that in the content. And then the ratings one that we talked about in the last video, I'm going to do something special for that later. So all this is going to do is loop through all these fields. If it's in the exclude list, we ignore it. And if it's not, we add a row to our table, and then we create the course table. And again, like, I didn't even know that this get field objects function existed. I literally just put this, and then the AI did it for me. I was doing get fields now, but it was doing get fields object earlier, and I'd never heard of it, but it seems to work really well. So let's head back into our shortcodes, and then we can add this at the bottom here. So now we've got the course table shortcode, and we save that. And when we refresh the page, we now have a table of information, and we can style this out and make it look nicer, but already we've added some value here. Oh, course ratings is not being ignored there. So we need to change that. Could have sworn that was in the list. Course ratings right there. Well, I'll figure that out, but as you can see, we've got some good data, and this is already stuff that people will be interested in. So visitors to this site that want to go to Livingston Country Club will have some information here, and eventually we could make these links. Like once we have a page for Alabama, we can link that. If we decided to do county level or city level, we could link those as well. So there's lots of options here to make this better after this initial run. And then the final shortcode is this one, the FAQs, which is a bit more complex. It's really only if this, then that. That's all it is. So we get all the information, the name of the golf course we're going to use as the title of the post, and then we get information about the type of grass off the green, the fairway, the dress code, how many annual rounds, the season, fees, all this kind of information. So we start with an empty string, and you can show this to a developer if you have it as a developer, and tell them this is the kind of like shortcode that you want to create, and they can do it. So first of all, we're checking if weekend fees and weekday fees are the same, and if they are, we add. Well, first of all, we're checking, if weekend fees and weekday fees exist, then we add the H3 FAQ. If fees are the same, we say it costs the same to play on both weekends and weekdays. If they're different, then we put the individual values in, weekend and weekday fees. Then we can check if the green and fairway values exist, and if they do, we can add a FAQ about the type of grass that's used on the course. We can do the same for dress code, annual rounds. With this one, actually, we want to make sure that annual rounds exists, but also that it does not equal the letter N, because that means there are no rounds. Okay, so with that, we can then add how many rounds of golf are played each year, estimated number of rounds, and we're just adding in these variables here that we defined at the top of the function. So green's aerated is a bit more difficult because the value is stored as months of the year separated by spaces. So we need to break them up into a list, and then I'm just looping through here. So if there's more than 2 months, we do a comma and, otherwise we just do and I'll show you what that means in a minute, but it just makes it like a sentence list. It takes each item and makes it into a list. And then here I've just put a very small amount of information about what aeration is, why it's useful, and when it gets done at this specific golf course. So this one's the more advanced function. It's still quite simple if you know code, but there's a little bit more to it than just the other ones. So we'll go back in, add this one, and let's see if it works. Save changes. And now we have some FAQs. So this is really interesting. So it changes for each one. Obviously the template is the same. And it would be very difficult to do this in the editor itself in WP All Import, just because of the way they do it is not particularly intuitive or user-friendly. So this is why I prefer to do it with a small amount of code, because you can just throw a shortcode in and then have your developer that you have already or you work with on Upwork or whatever to quickly create shortcodes. And also because with shortcodes, you don't need to re-import the data. Like, you can see how long this is taking. This is like a $10 server with Cloudways, and it's taken 16 minutes to do 1,000 rows. It's going to take a long time to do this import. And so if down the road I want to change the template in any way and re-import it, it's going to take the same amount of time again, which is slow going. So with shortcodes, store all the information in custom fields. And as you can see, we've got 242 posts there. We store all the information within the custom fields. It means that we don't need to re-import every time we want to change something. We can just change the functionality of the shortcode. And in a future video down the road, I might be able to show you how we could do that in a more visual way. There's ways to do this kind of stuff with Generate Blocks, which is the plugin from the same company that makes Generate Press. So we can make it more visual, the process of creating, like we could create this table more visually. But for now, I think this works pretty well. I've just noticed that the aerated comma separated list doesn't work. So we need to fix that. And that's why, because we set up the list, the text, but we didn't put that in there. So change that, save that, put that back, March and September. And if it was 3 months, it would be March, comma, April, comma, September. So that's quite cool. I'm quite happy with that as a first version. And in the next video, I'm going to wait until this import is finished, but in the next video, I'm going to show you how we could do archive pages on a state level basis. And they're really important, not just for users, but also for indexation, because there are pages that will have links to all of the sub pages. So all the golf courses that are in Alabama will be listed and linked on that page. So then those pages are the priority for us to get indexed. So we can go out to use indexing tools to get the state level pages indexed. And that makes it easier for Google to find these internal pages. And hopefully we'll have a very good index rate and get most of these courses indexed in Google, because they have got some good content on them. And as an example, just before I finish this video, because it's starting to get long, I found a website here which is about the best public golf courses, and this is what their course page looks like. That's literally it. And so once ours has been designed and has some polish to it, we've already got more information on the golf courses than theirs. and they're ranking. They're getting 20-odd thousand visitors a month, almost no links, no domain rating. So I think we've got a real opportunity here to build a great website. But I'll leave this importing probably until 2023, and then we can come back and do the next video.